Hey y'all, Billy from Perma Pastures Farm. We're going to discuss something today that might at first glance seem boring, but it's not. It's absolutely crucial. And what I'm getting at are the ethics to permaculture. And you want to stick around because that third one can be a little bit controversial to some people. But before we begin any of that, one of the number one questions, if I'm in an interview, is particularly with people who don't know a whole lot about permaculture, invariably the first question is always going to be, what is permaculture? Here's the problem with the definition of permaculture, is that, like William stated before, is that no matter how you explain it, whomever you explain it to is going to say, okay, so what is permaculture? The problem is that the definition, there is no concise, elegant way or simple kind of way to convey permaculture without confusing the person you're trying to tell. So I avoid, at all costs, I avoid trying to give anybody a definition. Instead, I stick with the prime directive and the ethics, because if you're in accordance with those things, you're probably doing most of it right. So let's start with that prime directive. And I'm going to put it in my own words. I'm sure Bill Mollison put it a different way. And this is initially the thing that just grabbed and hooked me to permaculture. Because as a liberty-minded person, it sang out to me. And that ethic is, take immediate control of yourself and your family. In other words, be responsible, take full ownership for everything you and your family do and fail to do. Once you do that, then it's out of everybody else's hands. You can't blame your government. You can't blame your city. You can't blame your cousin. You can't blame anybody but yourself and your family for the things you do and fail to do. So right off the bat, once you get that permaculture ethic, and those of you with a liberty-minded slant to your lives should automatically be like, ding, 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 ding. I'm going to pay attention now. Now that I got your attention, let's talk about that first ethic. Let's talk about earth care. Now, stay tuned, because this isn't going to be any Gaia worship or anything like that. Well, you see back here, this thorny, thickety, nasty mess was 3 times worse. And the only reason it was worse is that we are still trying to recover from the homesteaders that were here before us. They basically raped the environment. In essence, they did what Jeff Lawton described in today's farming world as mining, more than farming, because all they did was rape the environment, destroyed it to the point where it's requiring a great deal of recovery. And when you see weeds, thorns, thickets, all those things in there, it's an open indication that the earth has been abused. Now, why does that matter? Because I'm a farmer, particularly a permaculture farmer, which means I'm going to need an earth. I need one that's fertile. Now, we have all the methods in the world. That's what permaculture essentially is. It's a giant toolbox of different methods you can bring to bear to recover that. Pastures, same way. Every drop of rain that would hit this property would basically take all the topsoil with it down to Mississippi. So we arrested that. So once we get our foothold into that earth care, finding out the little things we can do or the big things we can do to change the condition that soil is in, then that's what we exploit. That's the tools we use. So we're leaving this area that was largely decimated and still is into this area that looked exactly like it. I'm going to spin around here so you can see it. It doesn't look perfect, and it's in recovery. It's basically in the first stage of recovery. It went from a thorny, thickety mess. We used our animals, the sheep, the pigs, to go through and knock down. It looked every bit as bad as what you just saw. In fact, I dare say worse. We partnered with our animals to basically, as Joel Salatin says, massage that landscape, and in some ways with the pigs, just bulldoze it to a certain extent. Once that was done, we said, okay, how do we partner to fix this? So our solution was, and it still is, you can barely see it now, but there's a lot of buckwheat, cowpea, and a number of other things in there that are bringing structure to that soil. And that's exactly how we go about making recovery, but it all starts with the earth. There's not one piece of this, not one thing I'm going to say in this video that isn't rooted in the soil, which is earth. Let's talk about the next ethic. Second ethic is people care. Admittedly, of all the things out there, I'm gonna say people and animal care to a certain extent. And in full disclosure, it's the one I'm worse at. Because like Eric Sider once told me, and he's right, is that people care starts with yourself. There was times where I was chasing that brass ring to get to this part of my life where I was literally working 7 days a week, 12 to sometimes 16 hours a day to get to the point. I had this goal, but at the same time, I was destroying myself. Massive back problems, every kind of problem you could think of, I had. So that fundamental part of earth or people care was completely neglected in me. So that starts with yourself. So remember that. Now, that's not to exclude everybody else in your life or the most important things. For example, this is another modality of people care in my view, and staying silent about it is something you're never going to see me do. At, consequences be damned. Part of that people care also involves things like what you see, surrounding me. We got comfrey over here. We got a little experiment with garlic in there, sharing the same bed. Over here, we got a number of other things. Another source of people care is honestly your physical well-being. I'm making a transformation and I'm using 75 hard, not only for my physical body, but also up here. Because those things, just like a knife, they need honing, they need sharpening. And sometimes it's so dull, you got to start from the very beginning. Start, all the way at the very bottom and build yourself up from there. Also, part of that people care means that I'm learning things about other things. And that means reading every single day. That means learning something every single day, even if it's what not to do, because there's a fair piece of that as well. Going back to that people care also means that the people around me, and I've had to really step back and pay more attention to this because I'm so goal driven that I can sometimes forget the needs and the concerns of the others around me. And I've been trying to take a better approach to doing that. And part of this 75 hard is doing that. People care also means, for me, looking out for the people in this world that can't help, that are being exploited. It may look differently for you, but it's looking out for those people in this world that may be exploited in the most dreadful ways. And we're doing a fundraiser through Kentucky Sustainable Living to help those people, particularly children. Also, the older people out there, we do a lot concerning helping them out, but we don't talk about that. But that is part of the people care. Because like Jack Spirko often says, you ain't helping nobody unless you yourself are at a point of abundance. I can't go out there and do what I need to help rescue these kids. I can't help these old timers that are really feeling the pinch in these times if I myself am not at a point of abundance. I can't physically do the work for them if I'm broke down. I can't physically feed them if I'm not growing it. So don't forget about that people care, y'all, but it always starts, and it has to start with yourself. Mentally, physically, and honestly, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out spiritually. So every single day I get into the Word. Every single day I pray at least 3 times a day on my knees, which means to have the physical capabilities of doing that, I have to get onto my knees, which I wasn't fully capable of doing to the extent that I'd like or without a great deal of pain until I discovered, thanks to James and Ashley over at Strand Farm, who taught me initially about the value of fasting. And all of a sudden I'm realizing, oh, gee, I'm having recovery in areas in my life. So getting myself more squared away is enabling me to help others to get on their feet as well. People care. Profound value, but one of the worst for me. All right, let's get into the what some people would call controversial part, and that's that third ethic. Depending on whom you ask, excuse me, that third ethic can mean anything from fair share, redistribution, or as the definition I choose is abundance or surplus given to the previous two. So earth care and people care. This is a massive point of contention in certain circles. Not with me, it ain't, because from a liberty-minded standpoint, ain't nobody around here from the government or anybody else is about to tell me how I have to redistribute the harvest I have. Not playing that game. So if others want to play that game, you're welcome to it, but homie, don't play that. So when it comes to redistribution, I'm going to call it surplus. And so all that surplus in the first two, any surplus I have goes back to the first two. So you're looking at one means in which we do it. Okay? It could be food scraps. Because if you look at our previous videos, we showed you how we raise pigs for 21 cents a pound. Using scraps, basically repurposing scraps from other very, very good places into our pigs, into our chickens. We showed you how you can make compost with a chicken tractor on steroids. Okay? Make compost, produce all the chicken you need for free, and in fact, make money on the prospect. Right here, you see another way of making compost. This is compost that I just put together 2 days ago. It's going to be flipped here before too long. But let's look at some of the other ways in which that redistribution happens. This is compost that was made a little while ago. It's sitting here, it's curing, it's becoming more fungal. Here's one that's less far along. And this one over here, feel like I'm on The Price is Right. This is one that still has to break down a little bit. But this will ultimately look like the others. This is my definition of redistribution. So what are we going to do with this stuff? We're going to take all this life, like all the things like the animals we process, nothing goes to waste. Absolutely nothing on a permaculture farm. It goes into this pile and then will ultimately be transformed into this. This will either top dress our gardens, we'll make teas, we'll make extracts, we'll do any number of things out there. But like the great Jeff Lawton always says, if it lived, it'll live again in another form. So nothing goes to waste. So that's our version of this surplus that goes back into it. Now, which definition to you makes more sense? And that's a rhetorical question depending on whom I'm asking. But that redistribution, it's so nebulous that nobody really knows what it means. It means something different. And that's something I see happening more and more in this world, where definitions are not concrete. They're so nebulous that it can mean anything you want. I don't like that. So I'm going to say that third ethic is entirely redistribution into the first two, the earth care and the people care. Let's come full circle. In a nutshell, going right back to what is the definition of permaculture? I think you kind of got it right there. Now, you could tweak it and define it a number of different ways. I almost never, in fact, I can't remember the last time I even attempted to give a definition of permaculture, because by and large, if you're staying within those ethics and that prime directive, you're pretty much a good way there. Now, there's methods, techniques, all those other things you're going to need to learn, but it can be learned. Let's recap. Earth care, people care, abundance given to the previous two. But let's not forget the whole thing that kicks all that off, and that's that prime directive. I'm not quoting it verbatim, but you get the point. Right now, at this moment, be totally responsible for everything you and your family do and fail to do. That's a really good place to start with permaculture. Go out there, do your own research, do your own study. Go get a permaculture design certificate from somebody that's really capable and somebody that's actually doing it, not this theoretical stuff, unless that's what you want to get into. You want to be a storyteller in the permaculture world? Okay, there's no shortage of those. You want to be somebody who's out there putting foot to butt and actually making a living at it, or actually feeding yourself and your family and your friends with all the abundance, then look for those kind of people. Hopefully this has been a blessing to you. Till next time, this is Billy from Pastures Farm, where permaculture is my passion. We'll see y'all next time.